This is Justin.
And this is Haley, and you're listening to The Price of Avocado Toast.
We're a married millennial couple wanting to normalize conversations about money. We want to hear about your highs and your lows,
The do's and the don'ts on your path towards financial freedom. Hi Toasties, welcome to Price of Avocado Toast.
Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been following us from the start of this thing, we are so glad to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah. It's May.
It's May. April showers bring May flowers, so hopefully the weather starts to look great.
And that went fast.
Yeah, it went really fast.
You know, we have someone on our podcast in season 3 that we already interviewed with, Christina. It was her birthday today, and it was snowing in Colorado. So what a friendly May snowstorm.
Yeah, seriously. Wow, that's a bummer. Sorry about that for your birthday.
I know, I that's not something to laugh about. I'm sorry there's snowing in May. But it's just, like, wild the way that this whole global warming thing is glowing and warming us up. There we go.
Yeah. Well, now that we're in May, we can certainly look back at the month of April and say thank you, Toasties, for all of the listens, all of the support. We had our highest month. We had our highest week last week when we shared the Holly Acre episode, which was absolutely devoured by teachers all across our platform. And we got so many different messages from teachers who were thanking us for sharing Holly's interview and for, speaking some words of positivity into them and some words of strength as they struggle with deciding whether or not to leave teaching. So we just want to say thank you, Toasties, for all of the support. We are so proud of this podcast and so proud of this platform, and this only happens because y'all are so great to us, so thank you.
Yeah, anytime you share our podcast on your stories or send it to a friend, it just spreads the word, and that sounded very church-like, but
Yeah.
just spreads our podcast and the word of Avocado Toast around to all your
Yes.
friends, so we just really appreciate it, and yeah, April had like over 8,000 people listening, 8,000 downloads, 8,000 ears listening across the world, and that's pretty crazy. So I'm pretty sure we're going to have some 10K months here in the future. Maybe it'll be May, maybe it'll be June, but I know that you guys are going to help us get there. Whoop, whoop!
I think that's so exciting. And Toasties, we are challenging you. Share all of our episodes in May with everyone you know and love so that we can have a 10,000 download month in May. That would be so cool. What a killer way to go into the summertime.
I would walk 10,000 steps. I'm thinking, well, what's 10,000? I can't take 10,000 shots to celebrate. That would kill me.
Cannot. No, 10,000 steps sounds just fine, honey. Anyways, you guys, we have a rockin' interview for you today. We are interviewing a fellow financial coach, but before I share a little bit about her, Haley, I want to kick it over to you to share about the awesome news that you dropped on the podcast last week.
Yeah, definitely. Before we dive into this episode, I want to share again that I did a massive revamp on my financial coaching program and structures, and I'm currently accepting applications for new clients. So I have 4 different programs for clients to choose from that it's really going to customize their needs and have an individualized program. And I'm really excited about that because I feel like this is going to allow me to serve more people in the exact ways that they need, giving them the support that they need, which I think is the most exciting part. Don't you think?
I do. I think that, the changes that you've made, just being an outsider looking in, really do make it so as many people that are interested in coaching but maybe have hesitations or, life situations that get in the way, this is going to be easier for them to jump into it for the program that suits their needs.
I agree. I'm just really, really excited about it all. And on that note, I am only accepting applications through May 15th. So that being said, you want to do that as soon as possible because this is May 4th. You want to submit that as soon as possible. You can do so with the link in the show notes, which just takes you to the free consultation. There's no strings attached. We'll just sit down and chat and see if this is something that you might want to move forward with. You can also just shoot me a message on Instagram at Price of Avocado Toast if you want to just kind of chat a little bit more about this.
There you go. Plenty of options to reach out to. I love it.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about our interview before we dive right in?
Yeah, you guys, today we interviewed Charlotte Darr from Save, Live, Thrive. She's a fellow financial counselor, I should say. And she's one of Haley's friends from the internet. They've been in like multiple different groups, chatting with one another and connecting through growing their businesses. She's an avid supporter of us. We love all of the stuff she's doing. So it was super great to get to sit down and chat with her. We always love talking with fellow financial coaches. She's also a fellow former teacher.
Yep.
She is a music teacher. So she just loves music. Like, we're just all about Charlotte. So we can't wait to share with you guys. Without any further ado, here's our interview with Charlotte from Save, Live, Thrive. All right, Toasties, today we are sitting down with Charlotte Darr from Save, Live, Thrive. Charlotte, thank you so much for being here. And again, thank you so much for rescheduling this through all of the crazy winter weather and power outages and all of the weirdness that the end of 2021 brought us.
And you lost your voice?
Yeah, through all of it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, of course. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on our show because I think it's really important to amplify all the voices of the financial creators in this space. We have financial coaches, we have financial advisors, financial counselors, and people are like, well, what the hell is the difference between all these people? And I want people to even know what we're all doing here. So can you just like start off by telling the Toasties a little bit about who Charlotte is and what you do for work right now?
Yeah, so my name is Charlotte Darr. I am the founder of Save, Live, Thrive, and I run a financial literacy, financial coaching, counseling business that really works with people to help them feel really comfortable, confident, and empowered by their finances. And the way to do that is really through financial education. So as a financial counselor, so I'm going through the accredited financial counselor certification program. So that's why I call myself a financial counselor. And basically that is just a certification program that covers everything from building positive financial habits and behaviors, understanding how to create a budget or a spending plan, understanding your cash flow, debt repayment strategies, investing basics, planning ahead, setting big financial goals, and all of that. And I started my business in the summer of 2020, which I can't believe it's approaching 2 years old. That's so wild. And your account was one of the very first finance accounts that I followed, because I think we sort of started like right around the exact
same time.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I started in the summer of 2020, and I was previously a music teacher. So my degree was in music education and vocal performance. I took Save, Live, Thrive full-time in November, and now
congratulations.
We're doing this thing. Thank you. It's super exciting, and I love what I do.
That's awesome. If you don't mind me asking, were you teaching at a school up until November?
Yeah, so I was teaching at a early childhood facility up until November of 2021, and then
Awesome.
And then had my last day and took Save, Live, Thrive full time.
That is so exciting. That is great. I think it's so interesting that, you think back several years, or at least just in the things that I've heard through growing up, right? Like, financial coach was not really a thing. We've obviously heard of like financial advisors, as people who help invest, but now we have all of these other humans that are helping people before they even need to get to an advisor. So it's so cool to hear about something like an actual accredited financial counselor, because so many people, I think, need that way more than an advisor. And we personally have an advisor, and I know that, I don't think he'd be offended with us saying that, because he used to be a financial coach. But so many people feel like there's not access to investing for them because they have all of this other prior baggage or stuff that they have to work through. So it's just so cool to see how the space has changed over the years, and to see that, somebody can be a financial counselor and really help people, like you said, change these positive habits and really start to grow. It's so cool to see that that's a thing nowadays.
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with financial advising too, I think that there are a lot of financial advisors out there that will only work with clients after they have a certain amount of money to be invested. Like, they have investment minimums that need to be made, and that can look different for every single person. And there's absolutely financial advisors out there that don't have any types of minimum requirements as well. But let's say, for example, that someone has a $10,000 minimum of like money that needs to be managed for that person. Well, where does that leave the person that is in debt, like maybe 40,000 or more dollars in debt? Maybe that's even high interest debt. Like, what do they do when they're not ready to take that step and work with some type of investment professional? And I think it's so important that there are so many different people kind of stepping up to fill in that space and help people take those empowered first steps with their finances to get to where they want to be. And if they want to work with an investment advisor, financial advisor down the road, fine. You know what I mean? Like, that's amazing. I always tell my clients, like, I want you to not need me one day. Like, that is my goal.
Yeah.
Is you don't need a financial coach, counselor, whatever anymore after our time together. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
That's similar to what I tell my clients when I'm in consultations. As a financial coach, I'm helping people get ready so they can eventually, if they choose to, work with a financial advisor. Most of the time they need some sort of counseling or coaching beforehand so they're kind of get their ducks in a row, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think 1,000%. Okay, so you are, a teacher, and we're obviously both teachers, and we've kind of talked about how we've ended up in the personal finance space through our own debt journey, but I'm wondering if you're comfortable sharing your personal finance story and, like, how you even got here, because it's very different to be a music major and then to completely flip and now be a financial counselor.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in college, so I want to start by saying that I was always responsible for myself financially from a very, very young age. Like, as soon as I was old enough to work, like from that point on, it was like the recreational things that I wanted to be doing, I needed to pay for it myself. Also, like, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. When I first started working, it was like 2011, and gas was like $4.50 a gallon, and I was making $6 an hour minimum wage. Like, I was working to drive my car at the time. Anyways, but so I knew going into college that I was going to pay for just all of my living, school expenses, all of that when I was entering my university years, my undergraduate years. So growing up, we didn't really talk much about personal finance at all. And I thought as I was entering college, I was taking all of those, like, I was making those right decisions, quote unquote. So I went to community college for a year, got some of those prerequisites out of the way, and then started my undergraduate degree in music education and vocal performance. And a music education degree is oftentimes one of the highest credit requiring majors that someone could have. So to get my undergraduate degree, I had to have 155 credits. Most of those credit hours that you have for a music student as well, like, your classes will be like 1 or 2 credits max. So like everyone's running around like wild all day. Their classes start at 8. Would very frequently be like my classes would start at 8 a.m. and go all the way until 6 or 7 p.m. like very little breaks between. So we were like jam-packed, busy, working all the time. And then on top of that, I was like, well, I want a double major too. So like I had lots and lots of credits that had to be paid for, and I applied for the scholarships. I was a low income student, so I was eligible for the Perkins loan. And again, as I was taking on these loans, I thought that I was making the right decisions for myself. And I remember my freshman year of school being so busy, feeling like I couldn't really work very much because of how ridiculous our schedules were. I went to the financial aid office and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay for everything. Like, what are some steps that you would recommend that I take? And the financial aid officer, or whoever I was speaking to, a person in a position of authority, they were like, well, you should take out another loan. And I was like, all right, well, this person is telling me to do that. I will take out another loan. So I had to take on additional private student loans, and it had an 11% interest rate. And I didn't really conceptualize what that
That's
meant
really
at
high
the time.
for student loan.
It's incredibly high for student loans.
Oh my goodness.
So that was my freshman year. Luckily, after my freshman year, my schedule opened up a little bit more. I was able to work, and it got to a point where I was working all the time when I wasn't in classes. I was working all the time, and by my junior year, everything else for school was paid for in scholarships. So my student loans basically came from those first 2 years, and then I bought a car that I thought I could afford. I could not. And then I was accumulating credit card debt during that time. So fast forward to my very last year of school. I'm getting ready to student teach and all of that. I decide to sit down and calculate all of my debt one day and realize I was in $78,000, $511 of debt. I remember, wow. And literally kind of felt like my stomach drop out of my body because I knew I was going into the music field and the education field, which neither of those fields are known, right? They're not known for their high income potential, right? And I was like, what am I going to do? And after like a couple of weeks of just feeling totally paralyzed by that number, like $78,000, like that was not a lot. And I knew what like the starting teaching salaries were in my state, and they were not that. And after I kind of hit a point where I was like, okay, I cannot just sit in fear with this information anymore. Like I need to figure out how to do something. So I started basically learning as much as I possibly could about personal finance. I started sort of challenging this message that had been sent to me all throughout my undergraduate degree in music of like, you're never going to make much money. Like, just
watch me.
Let that goal go. And I just started learning as much as I could about personal finance. And then after I finished student teaching and then entered into the workforce, by that time I had paid off that private student loan, which between my freshman year and then right after student teaching had accumulated $4,000 in interest in that amount of time because of that 11% interest rate. But I started to realize I am not the only person who's experienced something like this. Like I thought that I was the only one struggling with my financial education and feeling like just confident with my money overall. And it was basically the more I started talking about it and opening up with my friends, and not necessarily like colleagues, but like my other friends that were entering the workforce too, I was like, everyone is feeling this way to some degree. And that's sort of what ended up starting Save, Live, Thrive. It started out as just a blog. Like, I'm just going to talk about paying off debt because that's what I knew to talk about. And then I was like, wait, I can actually share people the knowledge that I've gained and the things that I've learned. And that's when I started working through the accredited financial counseling program and started taking on clients. And here we are today.
That is so rad. I love hearing that. And I love that a pit stop on that journey was paying off that private loan. That's got to be pretty rewarding.
That was like the very first thing I paid off, and seeing that number go away, like after that, I haven't been as worried about the other debts. Like as my financial literacy improved, I was like, okay, I want my money to work a little bit harder for me because everything else is low interest rates in comparison to the 11% private student loan. I haven't heard anyone have an interest rate on a private loan as high as my interest rate was.
That's
me neither. That's
neither of high.
Really high.
That's very high.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that that's gone. Was it Sally Mae?
Yes, it was actually.
Have you seen the music video for the Paying Sally Mae Back song?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh, it is hilarious.
Yeah, it's called, I think it's by like D1, and it's like Sally Mae Back or something.
And it's
really
all
funny.
about paying Sally Mae back, Mae back. It's got a great catchy tune.
Very
you
catchy.
would love it.
Yeah.
I just wrote it down, so I'm definitely going to listen to it.
Nice.
So what were some of the resources that you used when you were first getting started? Were you just like drawn to Google, like how to budget, how to pay off debt? What was it that kind of got you started with that? Was it a certain person, a radio show, a podcast, a book, anything like that?
Yeah, so the church that I had gone to growing up as a kid, they of course had Financial Peace University as like this thing where I was like, I know that there's this guy that talks a lot about paying off debt, and that of course was Dave Ramsey. And so I ended up going to my dad because I know my dad had gone through Financial Peace years before. And I was like, hey, Dad, like, do you still have these books and stuff? So I ended up grabbing the workbook and reading through the Financial Peace University text. And that was like my first stop back in like right at the end of my undergraduate degree, where it's like, okay, here's where I'm going to start learning. And for a long time, I didn't really know any better of any other resources. And I would even say, like, even at the beginning of 2020, that was still one of the really big information pieces that I would collect things from was like Ramsey Solutions. And then I feel like it was right about like the beginning of 2020 that more people started kind of stepping into the limelight a little bit. Like we started hearing more and more voices come into play. And I started asking myself questions like, what actually feels good for me when it comes to managing my money? Is it like spending as little as possible, like living on a beans and rice budget and like all of those things, which honestly like made me feel so bad about myself while I was paying off debt, because I always felt like I wasn't doing good enough. Like I wasn't living up to this standard that I don't think was like one written for me to begin with. And then also felt like I wasn't able to enjoy a lot of the things that I wanted to enjoy, but then also wasn't paying off my debt in 9 months or like some like ridiculous amount of time. And then I just started finding other blogs that I started resonating with. So some of my favorites have been Money Under 30. Nerd Wallet is still one of my favorite educational resources today. I Will Teach You by Ramit Sethi. That was like huge for me. So it was like the more I kind of stepped into the space, the more I started to kind of hear these other voices of like one that didn't feel as extreme and also helped me realize like, oh my gosh, there's a way to find balance between your financial goals and doing the things that you really enjoy. And that's like the big like tenet that my business is like now built on, is like you can be making big progress towards your financial goals and still spend in a way that's really in alignment with your values and the things that are important to you, and find that happy medium in that balanced space. So I hope that answered your question. That was kind of like
that was beautiful.
Awesome.
Can I borrow some financial counseling from you for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so say one of our listeners really wants to get out of debt and get on a budget. They don't really know where to start. Now that you have the knowledge that you have now, where would you recommend that they even start?
Yeah, so one of the first activities that I take my clients through is called a 30-day spending audit. And the goal of a 30-day spending audit is basically to get this really comprehensive picture of where your money is currently going. And when you do the 30-day spending audit, you're going to go through your debit transactions, your credit transactions, and just write everything down between your different expenses, but also the transfers that you make to savings and your debt payments and all of that as well. And the purpose is, again, to get that really comprehensive view of what your money's doing. It's information collecting. It's not there to like shame you or anything for where your money's going. It's to give you that insight of like, all right, here's what's happening with my finances right now. From there, I always ask my clients the question of like, were there any numbers in here that surprised you? Like, are there any categories of spending that you're like, this doesn't feel like good to me? Like, I don't care about X category and like spending this amount of money on it. I would rather put it towards this other place, for example. And in conjunction with the 30-day spending audit, I also like to take my clients through like a core values identification activity where it's like, here are the things that are important to me. So for me, myself, Charlotte, my core values are adventure, family, personal growth, adventure, family, personal growth, comfort, and there's one more. Those are my big ones that I'm like focusing on right now. So for adventure, I'm like, I have my travel fund. I'm going to send money towards my travel fund. That feels good to me. Personal growth. I love buying books and courses, like anything to like level up my skill set. And
Yes.
then comfort is like, I want to feel like comfortable. That can mean comfortable. Oh, comfort and security. Security was the other one. Emergency fund, like I want to feel secure, making sure I have the emergency fund saved. And then comfort, like I want to feel comfortable with like the things that are around me. So then you can take your core values and your 30-day spending audit and decide, am I spending in an area that is out of alignment with my core values? If yes, how can I make modifications to get me closer towards my financial goals and take actions with my money that are helping me live a life that's as aligned with my core values as possible? So that's like the really big first one-stop shop. And then of course there's some little action items that you want to kind of check off as well. Like, do you have an emergency fund in place? 3 to 6 months worth of expenses is like always where I encourage my clients to go. The more irregular your income, I kind of like to say maybe buffer that up a little bit more. And then start working towards your financial goals in the way that feels really good and in alignment for you.
Those
Beautiful.
are great. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important that people identify what their values are and make sure that they're spending accordingly. And not just because you want to guilt trip them into spending outside of that, but more so to highlight, hey, you've told me this is a value of yours. Why are you not spending according to that, right? And not a shameful way, but just being like, if this is important to you, like, you don't have to live on a beans and rice budget. If this is important, let's find the ways to make this work for you.
Exactly. I had a client recently where we were going through this activity. We kind of like swung back around to it. This was like after 8 or 9 weeks of us working together. And we had done this activity right in the beginning of our time to get working together. And we were going back and talking about like, okay, well, how can we actually spend in a way that's aligned with our values? Because a lot of times we're told how we should never spend any money. We're not taught how to actually spend our money. And this client, I was like, well, what are your core values? And she was like, self-care. Like, I love self-care. I love getting massages. And her partner came in and was like, you never have gotten a massage. Like, we've been married for a year and you've never gotten a massage. And she was like, you're right. And so then we talked about like, okay, well, how can you add space in your budget, in your spending plan, so that you can go get a massage? And to my knowledge, since they checked in with me most recently, this was like over the summer, she like does this monthly now. She goes and gets a massage and has that experience doing something that she enjoys while still working towards their financial goals, and also not feeling guilty or shamed spending on an area that's important to her. You know what I mean? And I think that's such an important skill for people to build and learn.
Absolutely. Oh, I just love hearing that. I love hearing that people are like identifying those things and making space for them. It's so, so important.
Yeah.
It makes me think that I need a massage.
There you go. Right as you said that, I was like, oh, here we go.
I love that.
Oh my goodness. So let me ask you, because Haley's mentioned this, plenty of times as we've talked. I'm still teaching in the classroom. Haley's obviously not, with her business growing. Where do you find the crossovers between teaching and counseling folks with their finances? Because I hear the way Haley talks about it, and it is so similar to the things that went on in the classroom. You're just, talking about a different learner and a different content, but it's still very similar. Where have you found the most similarities?
Oh my gosh, so many similarities. Like, I think that the skills that I built going through my just education degree and teaching and learning how to cater to different learning styles and scaffolding information, like all of that completely, I feel like prepared me to build this business and like work with clients one-on-one. And yeah, I think like being able to listen to people's goals, what their struggles currently are, and start identifying like this plan of like, okay, here's how we can get these questions answered in a way that's understandable, digestible, relatable, catered to this individual's strengths, and ultimately create that system that makes them feel really good and confident with their finances. And I think my education degree, I was talking to my mom actually a couple of months ago, and she was like, do you ever just wish that you'd gone into like business or something in school? And I was like, no, like if I had gone, like, one, I don't think I would be where I am today, and I literally think that I'm supposed to be my own boss because I don't like taking directions from others. So, like, so I think I was supposed to work for myself, but like I don't think I would be as good of a financial counselor as I am if I didn't have my education degree. And also my degree and background in teaching also helped me identify when there's something that I don't know the answer to, and knowing my limits and like when I need to go build my skill set, and also feel comfortable saying, I don't have the answer to that question. Here's how you can go find the answer. Here's this person that you should ask to get the answer that you want to have answered. And I think that, yeah, my education degree set me up for all of that.
You know, as I asked that question, the thing that popped out in my mind most was being comfortable saying like, oh, I don't know, let's look together or let's find out together. I think that the best teachers are able to acknowledge that there may be a gap in their knowledge or whatever it may be, or that they're unsure or they haven't thought of that in a while, but they're so willing to collaborate with their student or their client or whatever it may be to find that answer, right?
Yeah.
Rather than either give you a BS answer or shoot down the question or, you know, change topics, whatever. I think the best educators do that. So I'm so glad you touched on that. I think it's just huge.
I think it's so important because everyone has to know their own limits, and no one's going to have all of the answers to everything. But I know that if I found out that I was working with someone that just made something up or like just, you know, said whatever answer came to mind and they weren't sure if it was correct or not, I would be so mad. Like that's not cool. So
yeah. And particularly when you're talking about money, right? Like if I make up something about ancient Egypt, I don't know. You know, a student might be like, hey, actually that's not what sarcophagus, you know, well, I guess sarcophagi, I don't even know the plural of it, what those were used for. But if you guys make something up, they're like, hey, by the way, you cost me $3,000 or something. And you're like, whoops. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little bit more important.
I can't even imagine. Okay, Charlotte, I have to ask you. One thing I know about Toasties is that they love to listen to podcasts. So that's one thing I do know for a fact about them. They are here. And you recently, in the last few months, launched your podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about your podcast and what the mission is? Because I really think that the Toasties would resonate with your podcast as well. So I need you to pitch it for a second here.
Yes. So I launched the Thrive with Money podcast at the end of October, I think, is when the first episodes went up. Thrive with Money podcast. And it is basically the podcast where I want to talk about all things personal finance, but really through like women's voices. So one of my big intentions is like the guests that we have on the show are other like women financial educators coming on and talking about their experiences just with personal finance in general. Because I think that a lot of historically female voices have been kind of squashed in this area. women weren't able to get their own line of credit in the United States until the 1970s. Like, it's that recent. And that's like my big goal with the Thrive with Money podcast. And so far, we've talked about like a little bit of everything, like setting financial goals, debt repayment, increasing your income. Oh gosh, money mindset. I'm trying to think through everything, but Thrive with Money podcast. It's super fun. I love podcasting. I see why you guys do it. Like, it's amazing.
So fun. I really like that your podcast takes the educational spin. Anyone can listen to your podcast, being someone with financial background and knowledge, or someone who literally knows nothing and wants to learn, because you teach them in a very beautiful way. I think it's great. Everyone needs to go listen. I really love it. I listen every week.
Thank you. That makes me so happy.
I'm a super fan, and I think Toasties would love the Thrive with Money podcast.
Thank you.
There you go. I like it. I just think it's great that you're amplifying women's voices. You know, I'm pretty upfront about the fact that a lot of people that look and sound like me have dominated not only just the finance space, but just about every space in the world.
Right.
And it's only going to change if more people step aside and allow others who are qualified and who are thriving, you know, to have that space.
Yeah.
And it can't just be, you know, women supporting women or people of color supporting people of color. It absolutely has to be, you know, white males standing up to say, you know, I don't need my voice right now. My voice doesn't need to be the one that's heard. There's all of these other people who have just the same, if not even more knowledge, and it's time for them to have the spotlight. And I truly believe that that's what's going to make our world a better place. And so I'm just so appreciative that that's the route you're taking. I think it's really cool.
And
thank you.
I don't know if you know this or if Charlotte knows this, but only 20% of podcasters are female.
I believe that 1,000%.
So go team female podcasters, and we like having you here as a co-host.
I mean, but if you think about it, every you know, egotistical guy thinks he deserves to have a microphone in front of his face. Like that's how it is. You know what I mean? And like, oh, I've got something to share. And it's like, okay, well, so I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm married to you and just like I see all of your strengths and stuff. Like, I don't get how people wouldn't be like, yeah, like we need more voices like that versus the, you know, finance bros who are like, I don't know. I don't want to go into it. I'll get off my soapbox.
Justin's going on a tangent here.
It makes no sense to me. I don't know. I guess
heated.
It makes sense because our country's rooted in it, but
yeah,
nonetheless. Right. Okay, Charlotte, we have a very famous last question that I want to ask you, and I'm excited because every time we've asked this to somebody who's particularly like nerding out in the finance space, we always just get the coolest answers. So I'm really excited to hear your answer. If you could put a stop sign on anyone's financial journey, what would you stop them from doing? What decision would you put a halt to before they made it?
Yeah, I would definitely say racking up that credit card balance. Like, once that balance starts to, like, once you have that first feeling of like, oh, that's kind of that's a bigger number, which I would say for a lot of people, like, it's whenever it reaches that place where you can no longer pay it off in like one payment, to like pump the brakes then and there. Because after it starts to get past that point, that's when it can start becoming an unmanageable number. And like, credit card debt is a type of debt, because of its high interest rate, that it really puts a damper in the progress that you're able to make towards other financial goals, whether that be like, you know, saving for short-term things, or like investing, where it can be, you know, it's very hard to outperform the, you know, interest rate that would be accumulating on credit card debt in the market. So I would definitely say, like, pump the brakes when you start feeling that number on your credit card balance. Like, listen to it, because once the credit card debt gets to an unmanageable place, it's really hard to get it back down. And it's one of those like first big like check boxes that you want to mark off on your financial journey to start making the most of your money and sending it towards other types of financial goals. Yes.
It's that idea of the dog just chasing its tail in a circle, right? Mm-hmm. At some point you get to such a high balance to where that one paycheck isn't going to pay it off. And then you're chasing the payoff. yet because you've spent a paycheck trying to pay it off, you're then still spending on the credit card. And
Right.
it's this just vicious cycle that is so easy to slip into. Certainly one that we were guilty of when we first got higher limit credit cards as a young married couple. It's so easy for it to happen.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, oh, good job. You just paid off your card. I'm going to increase your line of credit by $10,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, we need
Yeah.
$10,000.
Yeah, you're like, you could just go look at my transactions, JP Morgan, and see that I spent $500 at Dick's Sporting Goods, and that was not necessary. Like, you can clearly see I'm mismanaging my money here.
They
Yeah.
want to get ya.
Right.
Yes, seriously.
But they want you to be a lifelong customer. And I say to my clients, like, let's all be terrible customers because we're not making banks any extra money. You know what I mean? We're not giving them that interest rate, but it really is marketed, especially to young people. Like, it's marketed as free money, that it's like, you can spend this right now. And I can't tell you how many. So I work with a lot of clients in their mid to late 20s. How many of them have credit card debt that was acquired either in college or in the very first couple of years outside of college, once they entered the workforce, and they're in their mid to late 20s and focusing on paying down that debt. And one thing I hear every person say is like, I couldn't tell you what I bought. Like, I couldn't tell you what I spent this money on. I just know that I'm paying it back now.
Guilty.
Yeah.
Same.
And they're also, they're professionals, right? Like, you are not going to outsmart the bank, really. Like, they know there are people who do the travel hacking game and all of that, but they're not worried about that because they know they have others they can prey on. And they have these, glamour marketing schemes where Jennifer Garner, one of America's most beautiful women, does commercials for them, like, or you have a beloved actor like Samuel L. Jackson who does commercials, right? Like, they are brilliant at their marketing. They know what they're doing.
Totally.
And so it's the game is vicious. It's vicious.
I think that's a great stop sign, and credit card debt is credit card usage is a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And if you are not going to be responsible with it, then I think you need to stand clear. And I speak that from our own
personal
experience.
Yeah.
It's so easy. It's so easy to just overspend slightly without noticing.
Yep.
Because your credit limit is so high that you just don't really think about it. And then you get the bill and it's like, okay, that's not what I intended to do.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. And I'm not anti-credit card by any way, shape, or form, but exactly what you just said about if you don't feel confident that you can manage it responsibly, it's okay not to use it. It's fine, because even if you get 5% cash back, which that's not a lot of cards offer 5% cash back. Even if you get 5% cash back, but your interest rate is 18%, that's a 13% gap between them if that money accumulates and you're paying off that balance with that high interest rate of 18%. It's a complete, it's not even a wash. It's a negative. You know what I mean?
And we didn't use credit cards for quite some time and recently fell down the rabbit hole of travel hacking. And I am now so obsessed that every single purchase, I'm like, oh, let's get the points. Let's get the points. But it's such a different thing to be in control and intentional.
Right.
And I honestly never thought that we'd be here having had such substantial debt. Credit card debt specifically, I thought we'd never touch a credit card again. We were on the air on this podcast saying we would never have credit cards ever again, and now here we are. But we're paying them off in full. So I think that's a beautiful, beautiful stop sign. Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I really want everyone to go connect with you. Can you tell us where they can find you, your podcast, your budgeting spreadsheets and planners, your financial counseling program, all of it?
All the stuff. Save Live Thrive.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, so my website is savelivethrive.com, and you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok, also at Save Live Thrive. And then my podcast is the Thrive with Money podcast, and it is able to be streamed for sure on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I think there's some other podcasting platforms that are in there too. But those are like the two big ones. You can also find my podcast on the Save, Love, Thrive website. And on the website as well, that's where you'll be able to find information about financial counseling programs, as well as some different budgeting tools and resources like the Budget Pro spreadsheet and the digital budget planners. So
yes,
I'm excited to connect with everyone.
Awesome.
Look at this. All right, I'm going to make sure that I link absolutely all of that in the show notes so people can go click and follow. And by the way, your TikTok's very entertaining, so they need to go over there to TikTok and get some financial education from Miss Charlotte Darr.
I'm going to go follow now. I'm just like, I don't post on TikTok, but I like really have enjoyed.
He
I've started to
scrolls
really enjoy TikTok
aggressively through
like
TikTok.
It's a super guilty pleasure of mine because I learned so much. Like me and my principal even talk about it, that like it's insane what my students could learn if they truly wanted to in a 3-minute TikTok, because there's so many content creators out there that are sharing just the dopest stuff.
It is such a valuable, just like you really can learn so many things. But like my partner and I, we're kind of gearing up towards like we're learning more about like how to take care of a house and stuff, because we're renting right now, but we have a very hands-off landlord, so we do a lot of the maintenance in our home. So I know he gets like a lot of home repair TikToks, but then you can spend an hour and a half when the intention was just like, oh, I just want to like open this up real quick and see what I can find. And then 90 minutes later, you're still scrolling.
Yeah, last night I got caught, like both of us are just silently sitting in the living room scrolling, and then I eventually like turned off my phone. I was like, okay, like we're gonna watch a show or something else, because we're just like silently on social media.
Yeah.
Right.
So easy to get caught up. So
I'm enjoying your warmth. I can feel you next to me.
Yeah.
But
I'm
did you see this
right
reel?
here. Yeah.
I just shared it with you.
Exactly. For real. Well, Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us today. We're, again, so thankful that you were able to work around our crazy schedule the past few months, and we're so glad that we finally got to chat with you. We're so stoked on the big things you've got going on, and we can't wait to chat again soon.
Thank you so much. And same to you. I know you both have a ton of exciting things going on. Thank you for having me on the show today. It was an absolute joy.
Definitely. We'll talk again soon. Thanks for listening to The Price of Avocado Toast. If you vibed with this episode, share it with a friend that you're comfortable having money talks with. And if you don't mind, we'd love if you could rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you're in need of my support as a financial coach, message me on Instagram. I'd love to help in any way that I can. Until next time.